Hi everyone, welcome to the show. This is a central bank digital currency panel. Marcus Brennemeyer is central banker. Darrell Duffy spoke at a congressional hearing about CBDCs and Bitcoin. David Yermak is an NYU economic professor. He's written articles for the BIS, and he also heads up some national economic research groups. While Yan Sung Shin is from the BIS, and he's an active central banker. So these men have tremendous amounts of influence in the central banking world. Now listen to what David Yermak has to say.
I think that's pretty well said, yeah.
Then I would like to, in connection to that, there's always this argument that the US was weaponizing the US dollar, in terms of the SWIFT system and all this, excluding certain countries or excluding and trying to use it as geopolitical instrument. Do you think that the whole development of these different international currencies will make it more difficult to weaponize the dollar? On the one hand, we say the dollar becomes through the stable coins even more prominent. On the other hand, there might be a lot of loopholes where you can actually, for other countries to get around it using other digital currencies. Do you have any take on the weaponization of the dollar? Is it a big push towards alternative payment systems?
Yeah, I think, the Chinese and the Russians are both trying to work against this, but it's really Ripple and Bitcoin that have been much more successful. And, there's a lot of Bitcoin capital flight out of China into U.S. real estate. Ripple, the U.S. government is now coming after them rather belatedly, realizing that it's not just Ripple, but the entire set of actors who are trying to compete with the SWIFT network are going to make it much harder to use that as a bottleneck choke point on the international financial system. And I think the horse is out of the barn at this point, that the ability of the U.S. to weaponize the dollar in the way that you're saying, the sun is setting on that, in real time.
So the U.S. government is belatedly going after Ripple. So SWIFT is an extension of the U.S. financial system. If we're in a war with a country, we just cut them off from the SWIFT network via sanctions, and now that nation can no longer trade. He also mentions China and Russia and says what is more important is Bitcoin and Ripple. He thinks specifically that the SEC lawsuit is a punishment because Ripple was enabling clients to bypass SWIFT. Now, he says the horses left the barn and the sun is setting on the SWIFT network. So in other words, it's too late to stop this. Now, FTX, PayPal, and Coinbase has recently partnered with TaxBit, and TaxBit is offering their services for free. Now, with IRAs, there's no reason to track all your transactions because everything within the IRA, all the swaps, are tax-free. iTrustCapital offers crypto IRAs and precious metals, and it makes it possible to have these tax-free transactions. If you use my link, iTrust.capital/Darren, you can get $100 funding reward just by using my link. So be sure to research IRAs and iTrustCapital to see if they're a good fit for you. So this is a Bank of America cross-border payments PDF where it was an interview between Fernando Arola and Marcus Musali, and in this PDF it says that they're head of the Bank of America products for the region. So central banks are highly active in modernizing and facilitate financial transactions as an affordable solution to the population. Real-time payments in Latin America, particularly in Brazil and Mexico, aims to fulfill those requirements. Now, you may remember Jim Cunha from the Federal Reserve of Boston leaked this presentation. It says Brazil is working with Ripple to build a prototype, which they meant a retail central bank digital currency prototype. We also have seen a lot of movement in Mexico with Ripple. So Ripple sent 54 million in XRP to Mexico in just 1 week. So just to put that into context. The ultimate goal is to make the electronic payment transition more popular and affordable with no fees to individuals. It is the regulators promoting and driving technology advancement. All payments are more accessible. These payments regulations, along with the new FX reform, also been approved and implemented by Congress. So they mean Congress for Mexico. And the near future will allow banks also to implement cross-border real-time payments. So how are they going to do that? Right? If they're going to implement real-time cross-border payments, that's impossible with the legacy system. So, something's going on here, I believe, anyway. This is Lisa Brashenek, from former SEC branch chief at the SEC. So listen to what she has to say.
Absolutely are more comprehensive these days. They are broader in terms of what they are interested in looking at. Remember, it was just a couple of years ago where we had the avalanche of cases where they went after just about everybody who issued a token. So I think they are getting more targeted. The people at the SEC are more sophisticated. They're understanding better what's going on. And things like the Ripple case, really have a huge effect on them. They recognize that they can potentially get major pushback.
So the Ripple case has a major impact on the SEC. They can get a major blowback from the retail community. So, she's former SEC, and she sees it clear as day that this was not a good idea, that they're getting this huge, massive pullback. Now listen to this.
I'm not sure that I would equate Gary Gensler with Jay Clayton. I think they have a different approach. I think the SEC has been open to hearing from industry a lot more than under the Clayton era, and had kind of an open door approach. I think, though, it's always been an enforcement, regulation by enforcement, particularly in this space, because you don't have the big established players in the space. And they're the ones that have the most control of the SEC, that have the ear of the commissioners most of the time. I mean, there's a theory of regulatory capture, and crypto hasn't captured the SEC. The big institutional players have captured the SEC.
All right, so she is a former SEC branch chief. What is she saying? She's saying the incumbents have the ear of the SEC, so they have the pull with the SEC, while the crypto industry does not. So now this is James Burnham, and James Burnham works for Jones Day Partner. He's a Jones Day partner and they're on Capitol Hill. A former Department of Justice lawyer went to work for their firm. So listen to what he has to say.
Question about crypto regulation sort of feels like it happens in a vacuum, and people are just looking at whether this or that agency, what are they going to do, what's going on, what's the narrow thing. But the Supreme Court has changed the law governing federal regulators in dramatic ways in recent years that is really bad for regulators and really good for people who think there shouldn't be more regulation. And so what I mean by that is they've announced a rule basically that says major questions of legal policy and economic policy and social policy have to be decided by Congress first. And so before a regulator can do something, Congress has to clearly give it the authority to do that. And the best decision you can read on this came out over the summer. As you may recall, there was a moratorium that the CDC placed on evictions in relation to COVID-19. And the Supreme Court said the CDC did not have the power to do it because the statute they were invoking was very old and did not clearly give them power to regulate the housing market. So when it comes to the DC dogpile today, I think what people don't need to keep in mind is that just because the regulator says they can do it, or just because the regulator claims to have some sort of legal argument that gives them the power, that's not the whole story. And really, Congress, what the Supreme Court has told us is Congress has to take the lead here. Regulators can't just do whatever they want using statutes from the Great Depression that include vague language that might arguably be applied to digital assets. Yeah, no, absolutely. So it's never happened with the SEC. I mean, basically, there's two pieces to this. So if a battle is coming, you want to be the person who chooses the battlefield, right? You want to be on top of the hill, not at the bottom of the hill. One of the reasons the SEC has been so effective over the years is because they generally are the hunter, not the hunted. They are the ones who decide who to sue, where to sue, when to enforce, and how to do it. There are other contexts in which people have challenged laws and regulations before they are applied to them. And the basic theory of this is you shouldn't have to commit a crime before you find out whether what you did was actually a crime, right? So if you say, let's say you want to launch a token and you're concerned that the SEC is going to say that that's a securities offering. So if you launch the token, you've already committed the violation of the securities laws if they decide that it was a security and the courts agree. But there are ways you can sue the SEC beforehand. It's called a pre-enforcement challenge, where you can ask a court to declare that that it's not a security, that under the securities laws from the 1930s, the token offering that you want to launch would not violate them, would not fall within those laws, and therefore the SEC can't come after you. That is something that you could then bolster with the point I made earlier about the Supreme Court saying agencies have to have very clear statutory authority from Congress. The Securities Act is literally from the 1930s. And so the notion that Congress in the 1930s was saying anything about the blockchain or digital assets or even the internet is obviously just ridiculous. And so I think you would have pretty good sort of broad arguments that the narrow terms of that bill don't cover things that are happening, of that legislation don't cover things that are happening today in the digital asset space. And so the point, though, I think, is just that you shouldn't have to wait until they come for you. If you want, you can try to be more affirmative and go after them. Now, the details matter. It would be, it's very complicated to put these kinds of cases together, but it's something people need to think about, because there's no reason why we have to wait for them to come steal our lunch money. We should think about going and roughing them up first.
So he's saying that lawyers should take more of the aggressive approach. I'm going to keep a close eye on to see if Jones Day is representing any blockchain company or crypto asset company. It says the C-19 whole eviction moratorium was challenged and put into Congress and then for a Supreme Court. So Congress has to ultimately rule on this, and you can take the aggressive approach and sue the SEC prior to getting any guidance from them. Just sue them and then try to make the courts decide preemptively. So his strategy is more aggressive, and I'm going to keep a close eye on that. And if you remember, David Schwartz said that they were meeting with the SEC. So this was in 2019, that they were meeting with the SEC weekly. So listen to this.
Have balances. Like if we just adjust the balance on a payment channel, is that accepting a payment? Is the payment done? It's very hard to decide how the laws apply. And that's why I think you'll see many organizations, Ripple and many others, Coin Center is another, lobbying regulators, not so much to change the law, but to clarify it, like to tell us what it is that we need to do so that someone doesn't come down 2 years later and say, hey, what you were doing completely in the open and completely transparently for the last 4 years was illegal from day one, and you should have known that. And we're like, we meet with you like every week about what we're doing, and now you're telling us we should have realized 4 years ago that it was fundamentally and completely illegal? Like, that doesn't make any sense. And so it is, I have tremendous respect for the people who do that.
All right, so Ripple was meeting with the SEC every week for guidance, and they never got it, right? So Gary Gensler has been saying the door is open for crypto to come on in and talk to us, and we've heard people like Greg Kidd say that, that's kind of like a Tony Soprano type of regulation where you get in and then that you tell them what you want to do, and then later they sue you, similar to what Coinbase is doing with their lending product. They came to the SEC with their lending product. The SEC said this is an investment contract, and it looks like they were threatening to sue Coinbase. So immediately right after they walk in the door, something bad happens like that. So I'm going to be very interested to see Jones Day, who they're representing in the crypto space. It seems like this is recently new, right? So this was about C-19 that this opened up the thought process and taking the more aggressive approach. So central bank digital currency principles. This is House Financial Services Committee for Republicans, and they talk about the Fed coin, and they want stable coins. So they want to not impede the development and utilization of stable coins, both those currently in circulation, those not developed yet. So they want competition in this space. So this is SIX Digital Asset Exchange, and this was interesting to me. I don't know for certain that they use the phrase on-demand liquidity provider, so this is a bit of speculation, but we've seen SIX and SBI partner up for digital asset platform, and now this exchange PDF, which seems to fit the use case of on-demand liquidity, mentions on-demand liquidity provider. So I found this pretty interesting. I'll add a link in the description below, and you determine whether you think it's related or not. So I hope everyone enjoyed the show. Please tell me what you think in the comments below. Please like and subscribe. You guys have a good day. Thanks for watching.